Yeah, I'll take the blue pill. So The Matrix Resurrections tells the story of Neo once again entrapped in the Matrix and having to choose once more whether or not to follow the White Rabbit. Well, we're here, everybody, the last big blockbuster of 2021 and the fourth and for some long-awaited sequel reboot of The Matrix, titled The Matrix Resurrections. Now, I have reviewed all three of the Matrix films over the past couple of weeks leading up to this. For a little bit of context, if you don't want to check out those reviews, which I would suggest, pause this, go check those out for full context and come back. But for context, I am somebody that is a gigantic fan of the first movie. It's one of my favorite films of all time. I was 9 years old when I first saw it. It blew my mind when I saw it back then, and even just watching it a couple of weeks ago, I still think it holds up damn near 100%. I think it's one of the best action sci-fi movies of all time. The sequels, however, not really a big fan of. I can tolerate Reloaded, I really don't like Revolutions at all. And so with that being in mind, and the fact that the trailers for this movie really haven't done anything for me, I have had very low, if not no expectations for this fourth film whatsoever. I've had no excitement, I've had no hype. I pretty much walked into it saying, hey, if it's good, I'll have my mind blown once again and I'll be excited because my expectations were so low. And if it's exactly what I think it's going to be, no harm, no foul. It's a movie I expected to walk out and not really being that enamored with. Is that the right term? So before I get into the good, the bad, and the ugly regarding The Matrix Resurrections, one quick word from the machines, our sponsor. Hello. Welcome to the training program. We'll get back to the review in just a minute. But for now, it's time for me to free your mind. Whether you're walking the streets of the Matrix or back on the Nebuchadnezzar trying to dodge sentinels, it never hurts to make healthy choices. So you have a choice to make. Remember, I offer the truth, nothing more. You take the yellow pill. You go back to the stodgy old world of omega-3s without extra nutrients and a nasty fishy burp taste. You take the red pill. You choose a powerhouse of nutrients with superior absorption and a path to a much healthier, more balanced life. I leave the choice to you. The fact is, omega-3s are an essential nutrient that supports overall health, but over 70% of Americans do not get the recommended value because of a lack of fatty fish and seafoods in our diet. Everybody who is still wired into the Matrix chooses fish oil to supplement this lack of seafood in their diet, but the truth is, those of us that are awake use krill oil because it's a better source of omega-3s. Krill deliver omega-3s in their most natural form, which is the closest thing to an actual seafood diet. So the next time you're considering where to get your omega-3 supplements from, unplug from the Matrix and say hello to Wonderland with Cody Krill Oil. Say goodbye to bad fishy tastes and weaker supplements and say hello to superior omega-3s. Click the link down in the video description for more information or go to CoryRedPill.com. So starting off with the positives for The Matrix Resurrections, it's an entertaining movie. If you want to go and get some escapism, if you want to get back into that action sci-fi world, if you just enjoy the lore and the world building that The Matrix brings, this is more of that. It expands a few things, it retreads a few things, it very much feels like home. So if you're a Matrix fan, this movie brings you all of the things that you've come to expect from a Matrix movie. And for the most part, they do a pretty good job. There's action sequences galore, there's a lot of that mind-bending lore, there's a lot of philosophy and allegories and metaphors and everything all throughout. You get to revisit most, if not all, of your favorite characters in the film. So for a Matrix fan, this is a pretty good time jumping back into that world. The special effects were pretty damn good. Of course, we've come a long way since 1999, but the special effects were pretty landmark and pretty mind-blowing back in 1999 with the first film. This movie's not exactly taking a giant leap forward. It's not resetting the stage for action sci-fi by any means, but the action sci-fi and all of the different mind-bending visuals, all of the world building, the showing the world of the machines, as well as the homeland of all the humans like Zion was in the previous trilogy, all of those visuals and all those effects were damn near flawless. And finally, I appreciate the fact that they took this fourth film in a very different direction. They didn't just kind of retread the same type of story progression that we've had before. They went with a little bit more of a meta storytelling format. They had it to where everybody is very self-aware of not only the Matrix itself, but almost in a way the story of the last 3 movies. The first act or so of this movie I could almost liken to Wes Craven's New Nightmare in a certain direction, and it kind of gets away from that, so it's not a full-on comparison to that movie. But when it first starts and you've got Neo, who is this programmer who has created this trilogy of games called The Matrix, and it has all the characters and all the events of the first 3 movies, and everybody's just very meta and self-aware with their discussion of what's going on. That's the type of vibe that I got, and that was pretty unexpected for me. It wasn't something that was really hinted at in the marketing, but it was something that when the movie started, I was surprised to find out that it wasn't going to be quite as predictable as I thought it was going to. Moving on to the mixed, one of the main ones here is Morpheus. You have Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, the guy that played Candyman earlier this year. He was Black Manta in Aquaman, and he's a very good actor. He's somebody that I haven't seen anything bad from. He's good in the role of Morpheus. I think if we're not going to get Lawrence Fishburne, he possibly gives us the best alternative that we could have possibly asked for. He's really good in the role. He looks the part. He talks the part. You believe it's Morpheus. It only takes like a few minutes for your eyes and your brain to kind of adjust. But on the other side of things, I don't quite understand the motivation for going with a new Morpheus. All the information that I could find said that Lawrence Fishburne was not asked to be in this movie. I didn't dive deeper into that. I don't know if this was just the direction they chose to go, so it made no sense to ask him to be back. I don't know if that was just a professional wording when they didn't have, the best contract negotiations. I really have no idea, but not having Lawrence Fishburne here as the character really just felt like a hole to me. It felt like something that wasn't really necessary. It certainly didn't add to the movie, and it did take away a little bit for me. And even the very in-narrative explanation that they give for why Morpheus looks different, why he's younger, why he is not the Morpheus that we know and love, didn't completely come together for me. Maybe that's something on a rewatch that'll make complete sense, but the quick explanation that we got didn't exactly merit having a new Morpheus in my mind. And the other mixed element for me is the action sequences. Now, there's well done action here. It's shot well, it's choreographed pretty well, it's certainly entertaining and exciting at times, but for The Matrix, it just kind of feels like run-of-the-mill Matrix action scenes. Now, I'm not expecting this to break the mold and revolutionize action or sci-fi like they did back in 1999, but there's no action sequences in this movie, to me, that really stand out. I mean, as much as I dislike Matrix Reloaded, there was scenes and action sequences and choreography and sequences in that movie that really stand out to me. This movie is just kind of like, yeah, that's Matrix fighting. That's Matrix chase scenes. Yeah, they're flipping around, we've seen Inception, we get it. And so while it's certainly entertaining, while it certainly fills that action box, it checks it whenever we walk into a Matrix movie that there's going to be some exciting shooting and hand-to-hand combat and people running away. It fills that void, but it just doesn't do anything to really stand out amongst this 4 films now. There's not really anything here that really I would walk away saying, man, there might have been some flaws, but that one sequence, that one thing, man, you got to go see it for that. There's nothing like that here. Moving on to the negatives. This is a movie that very much hinges on nostalgia. It very much hinges on you having knowledge of the previous 3 films, mostly the first film, and it very much hinges on you desperately wanting to get back to all of those story beats, all of those visual nods, all those Easter eggs, all those lines of dialogue.
Billions of people just living out their lives, oblivious.
And sometimes that can be the perfect medicine for a franchise that's in trouble or has been long gestating a sequel or something that fans just miss. Sometimes a little bit of nostalgia is the right dose to get us right back into that world and put a smile onto our faces. But unfortunately, you can go too far with it, and your movie no longer is just giving us a little bit of nostalgia. It's now dipping its toes into full-on just retreading the first film, which is exactly what this movie is doing. There's a couple different twists, a couple different directions. They certainly reframe some things, but almost beat for beat for beat, to the point where visual cues during fight scenes, lines of dialogue, character appearances, they are 100% almost cued to the pace of the first film, to where if you've seen it even once or twice, you can predict every little tiny thing that's going to happen in this film from the beginning all the way to the end.
I remember this.
And that's disappointing, because for all of the shit that I can give to part 2 and 3, Reloaded and Revolutions, at least they were trying to do something different with the lore, with this world. At least they had ambition. It was flawed ambition, but it was ambition nonetheless. This movie to me feels extremely safe, to the point where it doesn't even really come across to me that the filmmakers, the storytellers, the directors, the studio had any kind of real true passion for bringing back this world, for plugging all of us back into the Matrix. By the end of the film, it just comes across to me like they stared at the dead body that is the Matrix Revolutions and said, you know what? Can we get a few more bucks out of that? To the point where you have characters return that make no sense to be here. When you follow the narrative of the movie with the Matrix rebooting itself and starting anew, which is something that they unfortunately set up in the Matrix Reloaded, there's certain elements that get brought back into the story where I'm just like, why would the Matrix bring that person back? How does that make any sense? That their position in this story makes zero narrative sense. It's literally just here so we can go, oh, remember them? And possibly the biggest detriment coming from doing a full-on retread is that there's even a line of dialogue in the movie where somebody is talking to Neo about the impact that he has had in his adventures in the original trilogy, saying how much that he's done and how much he has changed. And he literally looks at this person and looks at us as audience members and says, I don't feel like I've changed anything. I feel like all of it was for nothing. The Matrix is back, it's the same or worse, and I'm literally back in the same exact spot that I started. And by the end of the film, that is 100% ringing true for this franchise. Nothing achieved by the end of this movie is anything that we have not already experienced in the previous trilogy, so why the fuck should I get excited? Why should I care about going through the motions once again when you have not given me anything new of merit? And when you already built in this whole reset button in Matrix Reloaded about, we've already done this 5 or 6 times and you're the 6th person to have this conversation. Who's to say if we get a new Matrix trilogy, they won't do that shit again? So why should I be invested? Why should I give a fuck? Moving on from all of that, I really could not connect all that much with Keanu Reeves in this movie. I know that that's something that's funny to say because people have always given him shit for being like the best, worst actor of all time. I've always liked Keanu Reeves more than your average person, and I actually think that his performance in the original Matrix is pretty damn good. I think you get a lot of different layers, a lot of range out of him and that character in the first film. This movie, he's just confused the entire time. 2.5 hours of the same look, the same tone, the same vibrato, the same cadence in his voice, and to the point where everything going on in this movie never really felt like he was getting moved or altered as a character. It just kind of felt like who we met in the first frame of the film is exactly who we are left with in the final frame. And that kind of sucks. When you have a lead character like Neo, and we're bringing him back after all these years, and the story is very much focused on bringing him back and, you know, plugging him back into this world and having him be that savior once again. If I'm not invested in him and I can't connect with him, I don't care. And part of that problem is the issue that I had in the 2 Matrix sequels, which is that Neo is way too fucking overpowered. Now, he's not quite to the degree that he was in 2 and 3. He's not flying in this movie, spoiler alert, but he still has superpowers, and it's all throughout the trailers. Every single time he gets in a situation where he's about to be fucked, he's just like, huh, and just does this force push. Pushes away people, pushes away bullets, pushes away missiles, pushes away vehicles, to the point where the whole third act, this giant action extravaganza of the movie where they're trying to throw everything literally at Neo and Trinity, I'm like, he can just push them all away. Why should I care? He's driving around and every single time he's almost getting hurt. Ugh. That's what worked so well about the first movie, is that it was this journey to becoming that hero, that journey to becoming that powerful character to where he's vulnerable, he's mortal, he's got flaws, he's learning along the way. After Matrix Reloaded and onward, it never feels like this dude is ever in any danger. So overall, guys, is this the best Matrix sequel? Maybe. I really don't know. I'm gonna have to sit on it for a day or so before I decide whether I like Matrix Reloaded or this, but I can tell you, at least from my perspective, it's not a very big leap if it is better. I mean, this is not a movie that is just reinventing the Matrix. This is not a movie that excites me for more sequels. This is not a movie that breathes life back into the Matrix brand, and I think more people will agree with me than not. It's a movie that it just does the same shit that we've already seen before, but decades later. It just says, hey, remember how cool the Matrix was? Well, here it is again. I can go watch the first film for that. I don't need a new sequel. So if you're a fan of The Matrix and you had hope for this 4th movie, definitely check it out. It is on HBO Max as well as in theaters, so there's many different ways you can check this thing out, but temper your expectations if you were not a fan of the previous 2, because this movie to me does not make any giant leaps forward to reaching the heights of awesomeness that the original film was. So check it out online and stream it. So what do you guys think of The Matrix Resurrections? Did you think this was a good spot to start a new trilogy off with? Are you just as disappointed as this as you were in the previous two? Is this your least favorite? Is this your favorite of the four? All of your different opinions, let me know down below, and we will talk about this fourth film as well as the entire franchise. Be sure to like and share this video and hit that subscribe button so you do not miss my Matrix ranking. And as well, please check out the video description down below for CoreyRedPill.com and take your first steps towards a healthier lifestyle with Corey Krill Oil. Thank you guys for watching as always, and remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean that you have to be.